and welcome to the Scary Goals Club. I am your host, Hazel Robertson, and I believe that to make the impact that you know you are called to make in the world, it requires setting bigger, scarier goals and then becoming the person who creates them. That is what I am here to show you how to do. That's what we're diving into with mindset, tools, tricks, really simple, practical, actionable steps you can take and start applying straight away. Because whatever you believe, we have this one life that we definitely know about. Start making the impact you know you want to make in the world. Fear is not a reason to stop. We keep going. We work through the fear. That is what we do in the Scary Goals Club. So come on in, come join, hit subscribe, and let's get started. Hello, I'm still adjusting my hair. You guys will come in. It's like, it's 1 o'clock. Let's go. Awesome. How are you doing today? Just checking my mic and everything. Right. So, welcome to, no, I had to check there. I was going to say October, Scary Goals Club, November's Scary Goals Club call. And we are diving into goal habits. So, get ready. It's going to be very workshopy, but obviously, you'll have the recording afterwards so you can take it away if you need to kind of go back through stuff. But we're going to be doing stuff in real time. So, grab your phone notes, grab a piece of paper, like whatever works. And we're going to be like writing stuff down or use the chat as well. So if you want, just a reminder if you've not been on the call before. So if you want to grab the Q&A box and pull that up, you should see it like down the bottom of Zoom. If you're on your phone, actually that's a good point. I think it's down the bottom as well. And you can grab and like get the Q&A. Sorry, I'm still like still sorting my hair. So if you pull up the Q&A box and just that is what we are going to use to communicate during the call. So if you have like as we go along, I'll ask you and put stuff in the Q&A. It's so powerful because you can learn from other people. I can learn from you. You can learn from me. We can all learn from each other. So use the Q&A box, put anything in there, any of the answers to your questions, and I'll read them out as I go. I won't read your name, so don't worry. It will be anonymous. And yeah, grab something to write with, piece of paper or your phone notes. And also, if you have any questions, like if like outside of the goal habits, which is what we're going to be diving into, like a bit of workshopping, I've got some time at the end that I'm going to answer any of the questions you have and give you like dedicated support and coaching around anything where you're getting stuck with any goals that you're working towards, anything like time, habits, goals that you're working. So like put any questions also in the Q&A box of like something you want coaching with or anywhere you're getting stuck or anything that feels really like heavy or hard or you're like, oh, I can't seem to get over this one bit. And I've had some questions come in advance, so I will make sure that I coach on that as well at the end. So if you want me to coach on anything about your scary goals, make sure you put the question in the Q&A box now. And I will dive into that. Okay, awesome. So let's see. I have a few little notes here. Okay. So we're diving into goal habits today. So my aim is that at the end of this session together, that you're going to leave knowing, okay, exactly what habit you're going to practice building over the next month. So until our next call. And you're going to know exactly why you want to do it. You know that it's moving you towards your goal. You're going to know like how you're going to make it super easy, how you're going to track it. You're going to feel really like empowered to just get on and start building this habit. And habits are so powerful. I just want to kind of recap before we dive in because like we can have these goals and like goals are amazing. But if we're not actually doing the things that are getting us towards our goals, then we may never reach the goals. Like you can have a goal and it can just sit there as this goal unless we are doing like taking the steps towards it. And the amazing thing about habits is like our brain loves to conserve energy and it builds habits very, very quickly. So it means that like one side of that is a lot of what you are doing at the moment is habitual, is on default based on things in the past, how you've done things in the past. If you are having a goal that is different than anything you've done before, doing what you've always done in the past isn't necessarily going to get you there. And so it might just stay as this goal, but it's not getting any closer. And so what we want to be doing is instead thinking, okay, this is the goal that you're going towards. Who is that person? And then how, like, what kind of habits would they be building? And actually building in those habits so that without much effort, habits take a little bit of effort at the start, but then very quickly, because our brain builds habits so quickly, and it's amazing at doing that, when you can build habits that are moving you in the direction you want to go, it's so much easier to just automatically like do the things that are going to get you there. And we'll get into specific examples, but that's what we're diving into today, is like making it just so easy to actually become the person who's creating your goal and just like taking different action and moving towards where you want to go. So hopefully that will make sense. Let's just start, before we dive like really into it, bring to mind, what is that one goal? You might have a few different goals you're working on. Pick one for the purpose of this session. So bring it to mind. I mean, you're welcome to put it in the Q&A, but you don't have to. Just even like have that in your mind. What is that one goal like for this session that you're going to build a habit towards? Okay. You can like close your eyes, imagine it a little bit. Okay, we're going to do a bit of visualization. So now I want you to, again, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths. We can do it together. Okay. So closing our eyes makes it really helpful because we can tune into imagining, like we're not seeing the wherever we are in our environment, like we're not having that input, so we can really get into our imagination. And now I want you to really imagine, so you have created your goal, like it's already done at some point in the future. Who is that person? Who is that version of you? Maybe it's like 6 months from now, maybe it's a year from now. Like almost playing a movie in your mind. Like, who is that person? What are they like? And if you find this hard, maybe you can't imagine stuff visually, you can write it down as well. So that's another way to do it, is just grab a pen and paper or your phone notes and just write out like how that person is being. So even imagining like, how are they walking? How are they holding themselves? How are they speaking to others? What kind of things are they doing? Like, what does a day look like for them? What kind of things are they doing? Like when they get up in the morning, what kind of things are they doing when maybe they're at their desk, maybe they're interacting with other people, maybe they're with friends, maybe they're with family, like playing in your mind a movie, like what is their day like? What kind of things are they doing? Really feel that. This is you in the future. So you're really tapping into your future self, that version of you in the future that is you, and they've already created your goal. And what are they not doing that maybe you are? How are they like thinking differently than you're thinking? Okay. So when you're ready, you can keep imagining for a little bit longer, or just take a few deep breaths and kind of come back into the room. And if you want, either jot things down in a notebook or anything, or put something in the Q&A and I can kind of share some of these. So like when you were imagining that future version of you that's already created that goal, like what kind of things are they doing differently than you are? And as you're putting stuff in the Q&A, I'll give you some like specific examples. So like, for example, with the goal, when my goal was to launch a podcast and record 30 episodes, like my future self wasn't like going back and forth on like second guessing herself of like, oh, should I do it on this? Should I do it on this? Oh, wait, that's not good enough. She wasn't like saying it wasn't good enough. She was just like turning up, putting on the mic, putting on the computer and recording an episode. She wasn't like overthinking it too much. She was just editing it. She wasn't like not putting stuff out in the world. She was just like editing it, publishing it, like putting it out there. And she was showing up speaking confidently and speaking openly and being relaxed. So those would be some of the things like when I was imagining my future self, like with the podcast goal, those are the things that I would be doing that maybe I wasn't doing before I'd actually started that goal. So again, feel free to share anything in the Q&A. And these are things that they're doing. So also like habits that they have, like what things are they doing on a day-to-day basis to take care of themselves, to help them get towards the goal. Thanks for putting in some comments. Okay, second guessing is a huge one. Yeah, I hear you. I think having an easily repeatable weekly schedule at the moment, everything I do is as and when I think about it in terms of that makes sense. Okay, so that version of you in the future isn't thinking in the moment about, oh, what should I be focusing on now? They have maybe it's a repeatable schedule, or they have an idea of like, okay, this is what I'm doing this week, or this is what I'm doing today, like ahead of the event. Is that what you're kind of thinking, rather than deciding like in the moment, or like this or this or this? So maybe they're being a bit more strategic with their planning, maybe putting a bit more intent. Okay, yeah. So maybe being a bit more intentional with the energy that they're putting into like thinking ahead, maybe thinking ahead of kind of how they want their week to be, and then, okay, what's going to help them get there? So being a bit more strategic with that. Okay. Yeah. So any of these things, like it can be so powerful when we imagine, okay, what is that person like? And if it's sometimes hard to think of you in the future, some people find that challenging. It can also be helpful to think like, okay, what a person that has created this goal, how would they be thinking? Like, what would they be doing that's maybe different to how you're doing things now? So again, you can take this away as well. And like, just the more that you can visualize and dream and imagine your future self and connect with how they are being, the more that you can kind of start being like, oh, I can be that person right now. And that's how you make it easier to go and actually make the goal happen. Like you get so much wisdom and inspiration when we can actually connect with our future selves. Okay. So now take like of the things that you kind of saw in your mind, or like things that you wrote down, pick one. How could you pick something, some version of that that's going to be a habit? So a habit is just like a behavior that you do over and over again. And so maybe like with the having an easily repeatable schedule, so maybe it's like, the habit is to, I don't know, plan your day at the start of the day, or like plan your day the night before, or whatever it is, or plan a few days ahead, like at the start of the week or something like that. So thinking about, okay, how can you, that behavior that they're doing, what is one habit that you want to build over the next month? And like writing that down. So again, for the podcasting, the habit was for me was like to record a podcast like every single week. Like that was the habit that I was building. And actually then I got into maybe like doing a few weeks in advance, but it was like the habit I was building was every single week, no matter what, standing up, like, or like imagining what I wanted to talk about, like thinking about it, standing up and talking, recording it, editing it, publishing it, and like rinse and repeat. So that was the habit I was trying to build for doing the podcast, was like just actually recording something every single week, and it not taking ages, but it did take a while at first, and then it got quicker and quicker. So have that written down and really think then the next piece, like once you have, so this is almost the like the first step that we've gone through, is that like imagining with your future self and then picking one goal. Oh, sorry, one habit. Writing it down, and then really connecting with like, why do you want to do it? Like, why do you want to build this habit? And the reason that like having a why is so powerful is like, there is going to be times that you don't want to do it. It's like, why do you want to do the goal? Why do you want to do the habit that's going to help you get to the goal? Or why do you want to do the habit anyway? And like, even just pausing for a moment now, you can put it in the chat or just have it written down, but like imagining what are like 5 different reasons why you want to build this habit. That is going to help you when in the moments you're like, oh, so whether it's like building a repeatable schedule or like planning a little bit in advance, is like, when you're like, I don't want to plan. It's like, no, but this is why. This is why I want to do it. So feel free to share, like, why would you want to build this habit at all? And certainly like one of the reasons, like I'll give you a personal reason of like why I want to build habits. And this applies to any habit for me, is like, I know that once I have the skill of building any habit, I know that I can apply it to anything. So it's almost like, it almost doesn't, for me, it doesn't matter in some ways what the habit is. Yes, there's habits that are helpful and they're moving me to where I want to go. But I know that if I can build a habit where I say I'm going to do something and I actually go and do it, like I know that that builds trust, self-confidence, and belief in myself that when I say I'm going to do something, I will actually do it. So I'm like, if I commit and I'm like, yes, I'm definitely going after this, like I know that I'm going to make it happen. So I think anything like that, like that, take that. If that's a useful reason of like why you want to build a habit, is just knowing that like there's so many benefits from it beyond actually like doing the habit, is just being like, I stuck at this thing that was really boring, or I didn't want to do, or it felt a bit like bleh, and I couldn't be bothered at first, and I did it, and now I'm seeing the effects of it. Okay, so here is one of your habits. Okay, to spend half an hour a day on a trial project, no outcome needed, just to experiment. Fun. Yeah, I love that. Just like no pressure, just experimenting, just playing, just like doing that. Why? To come up with new ideas, improve my skills and confidence with tackling new client projects. Yes, so fun. Yeah, that is really fun. So again, anything like that, like anchoring to that why and really being like, okay, that is why you want to do it. Okay, so you've connected with your future self, you've imagined what they're doing, you've come up with your habit, you've got your whys. The key thing now, so the next step is to then think, okay, how can you make it like so easy, like ridiculously easy. And so the reason we want to do this again is like when we're building a habit, our brain loves to form habits, and it's formed lots of habits. Changing them will always require more energy. It will always want to go back to like what it's done before, because a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing it. Like, you might start your day and you just have a quick scroll, and then you do this, and before you know, you're like, oh wait, it's like 10:30. Like that might be habitual. And so then to change and to be like planning or intentional with your day, or like have half an hour a day on a trial project when you're used to like not doing that and only like delivering on work that you already have, that is going to require energy and a lot of like cognitive energy to think about it while you're actually doing it. So the easier you can make it in the beginning, the easier it's going to be to actually like start it, to do it, to keep doing it, and to build the habit. And the key thing is like you can always make it longer. Like, so say it's like a length of time, you can always lengthen it afterwards. And I'll give you an example. So like with the podcast, like when I was recording it, the way that I made it like super easy is I was like, I'm just going to talk for 5 minutes. That was my minimum threshold. And I knew, I think the first podcast was like 10 minutes, but I knew that if I got on and was like, okay, I can, however shit I was feeling and however much I was like, I don't know what I have to say. Oh, like whatever was going on, I was like, okay, I can stand up and talk up for 5 minutes for sure. And of course, it would then become like 15 minutes, or like, some of them are shorter and are 15, and some I'm like, wow, that was 35 minutes of like ramblings or whatever. But like the entry point, the barrier to entry, as it were, I made as low as possible. So like when it was like, you just have to do 5 minutes, I was like, okay, I can do that. And knowing that like helped me get up week after week after week while I was building the habit of like doing something I'd never done before, doing it again and going through the process, and like it just helped me. So thinking about with your habit that you want to build, how can you make it as easy as possible? Like ridiculously easy. You'll know that it is a good level of easiness when you're like, oh, I could totally do that. Or you almost want to go and like do it now. You're like, oh, I could just go and do it now. So even thinking with the trial project, saying spending half an hour a day, what if it was like 10 minutes or like 15 minutes? Like what if, because sometimes, if there's other things on and it's this, and it's easy to be like, oh, I don't have a spare half an hour. It's like our brain will throw us loads of excuses. So it's like, okay, how can you make it as simple as possible? What if it's like, well, okay, 5 minutes on a trial project, or 10? Like, what is the minimum amount of time you could put on a trial project to still like get the outcome of building the habit? You can always make it longer later, but like what feels like when would be like, oh, that feels so easy. So thinking about it with you, and like putting it in the Q&A as well, if you want, of like, what could that be? Oh yeah, so even a 5-minute research or draft an idea would help, right? Yeah, so it's like, what is it you're ultimately wanting to do? Like, is it the trial project, or is it just like coming up with new ideas, or like thinking in a different way? So then it's like, okay, what if it's 5 minutes and you have your habit you're building every single day, and you're like, okay, today feels like there's a lot on, or I'm tired, or there's whatever, something has changed, and you're like, oh, it's like, okay, 5 minutes, let's just sit and like meditate and imagine an idea, or let's just like go for a walk and think about something, or have a cup of tea and stare out the window, or do some research, as you said. So yeah, how does that like feel, or like what's coming up when you think about doing 5 minutes? And then also with the like the repeatable schedule, or like the weekly schedule, or maybe it's like planning a bit in advance. Again, what if you can make that 5 minutes? If it was something like, okay, at the start of the day, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and just map out my day. Or the day before, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and like map out tomorrow and just have a bit of a like, okay, this is what's happening tomorrow. Or like at the start of the week, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and map out the week. You might spend longer. That's the thing. Like you might spend 15 minutes on it, but if it's too long, then it's harder to actually start. Okay. So yeah, let me know in the Q&A. So this is on the 5 minutes drafting an idea, much easier to fit in. I've tried this week to start it and managed 2 days out of 3 as I ran out of time on one day. Okay. So even, right. Okay. So even with that, it's like, the day of like running out of time. If this is something that's important, how can you build it in so that this is something you maybe do first? Like having the 5 minutes of researching, or what if it's like, how can you tag it to another habit you're doing anyway? When you're having your lunch, what if you think about the thing then, or start testing out something then, or like thinking about it. So if this is something that's important to you, to like broaden and like play with new ideas, that it's not something that like gets done later, but it actually is like one of the first things that you get done. And even like, imagine if it was just 5 minutes, like maybe it's not running out of time, because you'd be like, okay, I've got 2 minutes. Let me just like imagine something. And like, again, you're going through the creative process of imagining something a bit different, testing something a bit different. So you're like, cool, I've done it for today. It's just like building that muscle of thinking a different way, doing something differently. And so planning for the day sounds like a better use of my time than scrolling, and like a good start. Yeah, so just anything that, or whatever your habit was that you wanted to build, and just how can you make it so simple and so easy, and just like, yeah, keeping it like as simple and easy as possible. And really thinking with that, like, again, when in the day is going to be useful for you to do it. So for me, for example, when I'm building like an exercise habit, I like will do it first if I can at all, because if not, like all I'm thinking about is like, I'm almost like even if I put it in my calendar, I'm still negotiating. I'm like, oh, but there's this now and there's this, like, okay, maybe I'll go for a shorter run and maybe I'll do this. Like I start to negotiate. If I just get the thing done first thing, if it's something that's really important and I'm building a habit, I'm like, okay, cool, that's just done. So even just thinking about that, and again, with the podcasting, it would be often I'd record it like my first work day of the week is a Tuesday, and I would record it on a Tuesday morning, and I'd be like, it is done. Like that's like the first thing I'm like imagining, coming up with ideas, recording it, and it's like done the first thing of the week. It's like while I'm building that habit, I find that so much easier. So you don't have to, but again, thinking if it's something that your brain will come up with all the excuses of delaying, then when can you put it in? And can you put it in one of the first things that you do, and just building an idea? So doing it first is a great idea. I'd assumed it had to be last. You literally can do it whenever you want. So, and making it fun as well. So it's like thinking about how it can be easy, which is shortening the length of time, and like making it as easy as possible, but also like, how can you make it really fun? So for example, and like put anything in the Q&A, but like, for example, if you're spending a few minutes at the start of the day planning, or like the day before, can you light a candle? Can you like put some tunes on, or like make it a really nice thing? Or if you are, testing out new ideas, can you, again, put some tunes on? Like, how can you make it something that you genuinely want to look forward to? For me with the podcasting, I would go out for a walk first thing, and that's how I'd come up with my ideas for like what I was going to do it on. And like, that felt really nice. So the whole process, the creative process of like coming up with what I wanted to speak about and then recording it, like, and I put tunes on and have a dance about, like, it felt really fun, even when it felt really scary. And I was like, I don't want to go video talk. It was like, just 5 minutes, put some tunes on, go, like have a dance, and go out for a walk. So, oh, it is a fun thing for you. Okay, that's why I put it last, as I enjoy it, so it didn't feel like work. Oh, so fun. Yeah, what if it was first? What if it was, I mean, you could put it whenever, but like sprinkle it at the start of your day and start your day with like a bit of joy and a bit of fun. Or have it last to like end on a high. Just play, like just playing with it and just seeing what feels really good. Like that's the key thing with habits is like making them like there's going to be lots of resistance from your brain anyway, because whenever we're doing something new, so it's like making it playful, making it fun, making it like I'm just playing with it, just seeing what works. Okay. And then the final piece, so we've like decided you've got your why, connected with your future self, and you've decided you've got your why, you've made it super easy and thinking about making it fun. And then the third piece is tracking it. So this is something that can be really satisfying and rewarding to our brain is like whenever we track doing something, like we're ticking something off a list, or you can put, do I have it here? Let me just see. I don't have it exactly, but here you go. You get some stones and like, or that's some coral, I think, on a rock. Anyway, some stones, some shells. Put it in a jar. Like every time you do it, marbles, pasta, put a bead. You can put something in a jar to track it every time you do it. Grab a piece of paper, like stick it on your fridge or somewhere that you see it, and like tick it off if you do it. While you're building the habit, like can feel really satisfying and rewarding to your brain. And then eventually it'll get to the point that it'll just be what you're doing, but the intrinsic motivation of it will be really satisfying. So you will just, for example, with the podcasting, once I got into the swing of it, it was just quite easy. Like I didn't need to like tick off that I'd done one. It felt rewarding going through that process and like it felt really good. And it's the same, you know, if you were building the planning habit, it's like eventually we get to the point where you've got much more like headspace and you're thinking more strategically and you're like, oh, genuinely, this feels good. So going back to how things used to be will feel like you won't want to do it. So you'll be intrinsically motivated to keep going. So even just thinking like, how do you want to track this while you're building your habit? Think about that. Do you want to grab a piece of paper? Do you want to put something in a jar? Or even on a piece of paper, you can draw like little hearts or like little flowers or something. Like can be creative with it. It doesn't really matter, but just having something that's fun to like, yes, I did it. Even if it's 5 minutes or 2 minutes, it's like, yes, I did it. Like that's the key thing is just doing it and then building the habit. And then you can always like increase the time later. So thinking about that, if you've got any ideas of how you want to track it, like put them in the Q&A as well. Okay. So, and then the key thing like with all of this is being kind to yourself. There's no like right and like if you miss a day or you miss doing it, like it's all good. This is like a skill you're learning. Your brain will want to default back. It won't want to do it. That's okay. And just being kind to yourself and just being like, okay, I'll just like get back on track the next day or get back on track this afternoon. Like there's no like right or wrong. It's not to be like, well, I didn't do one day, like that's it. And just like tearing it all up. It's just be so kind to yourself while you're doing this. Like you're learning so much in the whole process. My diary has a habit tracker, which is great. Awesome. Yeah, perfect. So perfect. Put that in, start tracking it, see how you get on, and then building that in. And like you'll notice a difference even within a couple of weeks, it'll just become a bit more like, oh, this is just what I do. And then certainly by a month, it'll just be part of your day. You'll just have like built that in. So you might find you don't even need to track anymore. You don't want to, but yeah, habit tracker, that sounds really fun. So, okay, we're almost at time, but so any questions, put them in about your goals. I did get one in advance, so I'm going to stay on and answer that question. If you need to leave, you can. The recording will be up. But if you do have any questions you want me to answer anonymously, like if you're getting stuck around your scary goal or anything, put it in the Q&A and I'll make sure I answer it. So, okay, this was the question I got through Instagram, which was how to keep focused when it looks like the goal might be impossible. Okay, so this is really fun. Get ready for some coaching. Okay, so first of all, I just want to offer that the goal might be impossible is a belief. Okay, it's a story that your brain is telling you about the goal. So there's the goal, and then your brain's interpretation of the goal is that the goal might be impossible. Now, the reason that I say that is that even just separating it out, someone else might look at the goal and be like, oh, that's totally possible. Or like, of course that's possible. You could even get like 99 people might say it's impossible. One person might be like, oh, yeah, that's totally possible. So just knowing that the goal might be impossible, like maybe a lot of people would agree with you, but there might be some people that don't agree. So it is your brain's belief based on your upbringing, your past, like what has happened. Also thinking like, so anything that we are believing, like a belief, a thought, when we think it, it makes us feel a certain way in our body, which drives our behavior. So, for example, when you're thinking the goal might be impossible, how are you going to be feeling when you think that? I know that if I think like the goal might be impossible, I feel a bit like, well, actually, two bits. It depends. I can almost feel defeated and a bit like, well, almost like, well, what's the point? But then part of me, like, I can also, like, it can be quite motivating. And I'm like, well, I'm going to show it's not impossible. So it can kind of depend either way, which is also so interesting that, like, just like a belief can be the same thing can be motivating to someone and like completely shut someone else down. So that's why it's so important to understand, okay, what are beliefs that our brain is thinking, thoughts that we have, the story, and then how does that story make us feel? So checking in with you, how does it make you feel when you think the goal might be impossible? If it is more like defeat or like, oh, heavy, there's a bit of like that's just really good to know, because even just thinking then again, how we're feeling drives our behavior. So what is it making you want to do? If I'm feeling defeated and a bit like it makes me not want to do anything. It makes me not want to do anything towards a goal if I was like, oh, well, it might be impossible. So it's almost like, well, what's the point? Why would I even try? So if that is you, it's really good to understand that, because if you're feeling like you're maybe not taking the action you want, or things feel a bit like heavy when you're thinking about the goal, it's because of this belief the goal might be impossible. Now, hang on, where was I gonna okay. So the key thing with like all of this is knowing there's the goal, and then there's what you want to think about it. And what you think about the goal drives how you feel, which drives what you do or don't do. So like your forward momentum and what you're doing is driven by how you are thinking about the goal, not the goal itself. So you could have the same goal, and whether you think it's impossible or like, I'm going to go all in on this goal, you're going to have two very different outcomes. And really just checking in, like, again, if you think it's impossible, how do you know it's impossible? Like, what evidence, and really just checking in, like, what evidence is your brain using that it's impossible? Is there like a number attached to it and a timeline, and you're looking at it and it's like whatever you've done in the past, you're trying to project it forward, and it's like, well, I haven't done this, therefore this bit isn't going to happen. Like, what is the evidence your brain's using that it might be impossible? And also, do you know that it is definitely true that it's impossible? Like, how do you definitely know? And the reason we're asking all these questions is trying to like poke holes in this belief and just challenge that, like, what if it's not impossible? What if there is some possibility of it? And could you imagine even thinking like, could someone else do the goal? Like, because almost there's a like, oh, that might be impossible for me based on like me right now, but like, could you imagine someone else doing it? What's different about them? Like, why would it be okay for them? Why would it be possible for them and not for you? So you can kind of like play around a little bit with like, do you definitely, your brain's like, it might be impossible. And it's like, is that definitely true? Because knowing that like when your brain is focusing on that it might be impossible, it's probably leading to you just like shutting down and not actually doing much towards it, or being like, oh, like spinning out, lots of self-doubt. The other thing is like, the other way to think about it is whenever we're doing something new, it is always impossible until it's done. There's so many things, and so many things like you can imagine of like different like creative people and leaders like throughout the centuries, where everyone told them that this thing was impossible and they believed it was possible, and it was always impossible until it was actually done. And then it was like, oh, for example, like the 4-minute mile, it was like, the 4-minute mile is impossible, we will never do it, until it was done. And then so many people broke the 4-minute mile because suddenly it was like, oh, it is actually possible. But there was some people that were willing to believe, even with everyone else saying it's impossible, that it was possible. And the other thing to consider, like taking all of this in, is like even like it's also checking like what is it about the goal that seems impossible? Because if it's something like doing this goal in this time frame, what if you just let go of the time frame? Like, for example, I'm trying to think. Okay, so for example, say with my scary goal of like, say I had a scary goal and I was like, I'm going to do 30 podcast episodes in like a week or something. And then I was like, this is impossible. And it's like, well, probably someone's done it. So I could do it, but maybe it felt impossible at that point. But it was like, okay, what if I extended it to like 30 podcast episodes in 30 years? It's like, okay, I could probably do that. And it's like moving it back. So what is your goal? Could it be possible in like 10 years? Like, is that possible? Is it possible in 5 years? Is it possible in a year? Like, can you play with the time frame? And is there any point in changing the time frame that you're like, okay, that's actually possible? And so knowing that, like, with any of the goals that we have, the time frame is so helpful because it brings up all of the unhelpful and limiting beliefs that were there anyway, like it might be impossible. Like that was there anyway. And having a time frame potentially brought that up. But equally, like the time frame also doesn't matter at all, because if it takes a bit longer or like it takes longer than you thought, you still have the goal at the end of it. So like the time's going to pass anyway. Like it almost doesn't matter. So really playing with like, okay, is there any like playfulness of the goal, or like what if you shrunk the goal down a bit? Like where does it feel possible? So for example, with the podcast episode, say it was like, well, if I do one podcast episode, okay, that feels possible. Maybe like 1,000 feels impossible or whatever. So it's like, where is just playing with like, when is it that your brain goes, no, it's impossible, or it might be impossible. And like playing with what the boundaries of that are and being like, okay, cool. So this bit's possible, but this bit feels like maybe a little bit unbelievable, and just playing with like what that is. And what you're showing your brain is actually there's some elements of this that are not impossible. And also knowing the reason that our brain thinking, why is your brain offering you this thought that it might be impossible? So our brains are super, super smart. It's the same with the habits as well. Like you have your habit, you're going to go after it, and your brain will pick up so much resistance, and it'll be like, nah, just do what you've always done, or like, don't bother planning a week. Just like see how it goes. It's fine. Or like, don't try out like testing out new ideas. Just like, do what you've always done. It's going to kick up a lot of resistance and it's the same with why it will throw up thoughts like this might be impossible, because it doesn't want you to do something different. Like our brains are wired to keep us kind of comfortable where we are. It's familiar. Our brains were very much working habitually. It's like, don't rock the boat. Don't do anything new. Don't do anything where you might fail. If it's impossible, you might fail. You might look stupid. People might laugh at you. You might like whatever the thing is. Your brain's like, don't do it. So it's like if it throws a belief at you, like this might be impossible, then it's like keeping you from actually trying it. So if like thinking about it being impossible is making you feel like defeat and not wanting to go after it. So I just want to offer like understanding why your brain is maybe offering you that as a belief, and then just really checking in, like, is it actually true that it's impossible? Is there some version of it that feels possible? Focusing on that. And then also you can think, okay, how does your future self, who's already created the goal in whatever timeline, however long it took, they've already made the goal happen. Like, what are they believing about the goal right now? And the more that we can tap into our future self and imagine, okay, what are they thinking? We get so much more wisdom, because from where we are now, we're like, it's impossible. I can't do it. Oh, like all of the like self-doubt and all the reasons we can't comes up. But like if you go to the other side where you're like, okay, I've already created it, like it's done. Like, what are they thinking about the goal? They're thinking about maybe like, oh, I'm going after it anyway, or like, this is going to be so fun, or like, I'm going to see how far I get, or I'm going to make it possible, or I'm going to be the first one that does this to ever make it possible, or like, I'm going to keep trying until it's possible, or like, I'm doubling down no matter how long it takes. Like, I know that I'm going to get as far as I can with this. Like, they're probably thinking a very different thought that's going to then make them feel maybe more empowered, more energized, more motivated, that's going to make them take action and actually move towards it. Because again, your brain wants you to not do anything. But like the other question to muse over is like, so what if it's impossible? Why would you not go after it anyway? Why would you not see how far you can get? Like, what if it could actually be possible? Why is it worth it to go after it? Even if you don't reach the goal exactly how you thought you would, why is that worth it? So a lot of different things to think about. But anyway, hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, drop me a message, like if there's anything else I can help with that. But just knowing that it is always impossible till it's done, and you have the goal, and just how you are thinking about that goal, like that is going to change how you're showing up and what you think is possible, and like the actions and the behavior that you're taking. So be onto your brain, like put helpful thoughts and beliefs in there that are going to help you move to where you want to go. And like, why not you? Why not do something that is impossible, that other people maybe think is impossible? Like, go and blow your mind and other people's minds. Like, why not you? So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Anyway, I hope you have an amazing rest of the day and an amazing week ahead and a month ahead as well. I'll see you. Thank you so much for all your energy and putting everything in the Q&A. That's been so helpful as well. And I'll see you in December, the next Scary Goals Club party call. All right. See you guys later. Mwah. Bye. Oh, wait here. Oh, you're welcome. See ya. Bye. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If this was helpful, please hit subscribe and leave a review. This helps get this work in the hands of more purposeful people. That is, more people creating bigger, scarier goals, making an even bigger impact in the world. And if you want to take this work deeper and work with me directly, head to the show notes and I've got all of the information there. If you've got any questions, or if there's anything you're like, ooh, I'd love you to talk about that on the pod, please just get in touch. I love hearing from you guys. And I'll see you next time in the Scary Goals Club.